How does something qualify as false? If someone were to declare something to be false, they are in essence saying that something is untrue. It is contrary to what is true. But let me ask you, is preference the same as truth? Is the truth simply a personal preference? These are some of the questions we will explore as we begin to journey into the topic of false teaching. So let's do that today on Truth Matters. Today, truth is denied, ignored, and resisted with open hostility. Yet in life and in times of crisis, we discover that truth matters. Well, welcome back to Truth Matters. Today we start Season 5, and I'm excited for what is coming this year. As you've already heard in the introduction, we are beginning this season exploring the topic of false teaching. Let's begin by looking at a phrase that in the flow of popular and current expressions. Someone would say, well, that's your truth, but it's not my truth. Now, I'm sure that you've seen or heard this statement. Maybe it was in the media or maybe in print or in conversation. In today's marketplace of ideas, it's a very popular phrase. But in reality, can such a statement actually be valid? Do individuals actually have the authority to dictate reality to that degree? Well, it's an interesting process that occurs when people talk and put ideas together. People say one thing, but actually mean or infer something different. Well, take, for instance, the phrase that you often heard me use in Truth Matters. The Bible doesn't mean what it says, it means what it means. This phrase is pointing out that meaning or definition requires more than just a simple quote. Meaning requires context, because words have a range of meanings. A context is required in order for someone to know what a person or statement means by what they're saying. Now, apply that to the statement I quoted earlier. That's your truth, but it's not my truth. Does this statement mean that truth is actually subject to personal or subjective interpretation or application? Can reality be actually bent to a person's interpretive power? Now, the reason I ask this is because if we're to explore the concept of false teaching, we need to qualify what is true and what is false. When you hear someone say that something is true, what do they mean when they say that? In other words, what do people mean when they say your truth and my truth? Now, understand this. This is the beginning of a journey that will take many weeks in completing and examining the idea of false teaching. We are going to be looking at false teaching in reference to biblical truth, and so it becomes easier because the Bible is a referent by which we can measure true and false. But we also have to acknowledge and recognize how this differs when the world talks about truth and what they mean. So I want us to better understand what the world is saying when they and what they mean when they talk about truth. Now, in order to do that, I want to provide some brief instruction on the prevailing theories concerning truth. Now, this will not be exhaustive or deep, but I hope it will be enough so that you can understand how many in our world are arriving at some of the things that they're saying and how they get to those conclusions. Because I don't know about you, but I am often puzzled at how people arrive at the conclusions that they're stating. So let's begin. Now, currently, there are basically 5 theories about knowing what is true that are popular. Now, I say 5, but within these 5 theories, there can be many sub-branches and subcategories, and there are developing theories that can and will spring out from them. I think you'll see how that's possible when we begin to examine them. Now, let's begin with the postmodern theory, the postmodern theory of truth. This theory holds that the truth is not a single or objective reality. It is relative and constructed through language, culture, and power dynamics. It favors multiple localized perspectives. It rejects what is called the universal meta-narrative. Now, meta-narrative is basically a big word that that talks about an overarching story that is the basis for all parts of life, culture, history, and reality. Now, as a Christian, we would say that history is His story. God is the center of reality. He is the final and ultimate reality. His self-revelation is the basis for the Christian meta-narrative, which is God Himself. Anyway, postmodernism rejects any and all meta-narratives, especially the Christian one. Instead, postmodernism favors a multiple, localized, personal perspective. Therefore, they use such language as, that's what's true for me. Postmodernism rejects absolute truth. Truth for them is subjective and relative. It is subject to individual experience or cultural viewpoints. Truth comes together through dialogue, interpretation, and agreement in communities. Truth can be, whatever is accepted. Postmodernism acknowledges multiple and sometimes conflicting and contradictory realities. It challenges the idea of a single unified knowledge. In science, it questions that scientific truths are really objective. Instead, for them, scientific knowledge is a product of cultural frameworks and powers. In terms of morality, moral truth is totally relative. Even knowledge is incomplete since it's subject to negotiation. Truth is what you want it to be. Now, next comes the constructivism theory of truth. This theory declares that truth isn't a fixed or external reality. Instead, truth is a product of human construction. This is done through social processes, experiences, and rational deliberations. And while this theory doesn't deny that the objective world, it's all around you, yet it argues that knowing truth is always shaped by culture, language, and shared agreement. They would look at the world and maybe agree that certain truths are in fact true. This theory suggests truth, especially moral truth. Human agency is central to the constructing of knowledge and truth. In this theory, what is true is influenced by social agreement, historical context, and cultural practices, not by objective facts. This theory questions the idea that truth perfectly mirrors independent reality. This theory seeks to explain how we come to know something, and it's through agreement or development or human effort. It does not provide a map or a singular objective truth. Now, next comes the pragmatic theory of truth. Now, this theory proposes that truth isn't static in correspondence to reality. Instead, truth is what proves to be useful, effective, acceptable in guiding action and solving problems. Truth is dynamic, it's human-centered, and is tied to experience and not practical consequences. True ideas are those that work and achieve goals. Truth is a tool for achieving a desired goal. Truth is validated through experience. The meaning for truth lies in concrete and practical effects, ideas, and beliefs, and they are tools that are valuable according to their effectiveness. Pragmatism challenges traditional views of truth where truth is static, independent, and has absolute properties. Truth for the pragmatics is only corresponds to reality in the way it is successful in achieving its goals. Next comes the correspondence theory of truth. This theory says that statement, belief, or proposition is true if and only if it describes or matches an objective state of affairs in the world. This must also exist independent of our minds. It describes as the common sense of truth. It would say something like, the cat is on the rug, and they would say that only because there's a real cat on a real rug, and the cat is in fact sitting on it. The statement is true because there is a factual relationship between what is said and what exists in the world. This theory of truth is in direct contrast to a subjective or culturally defined truth. The core principles behind this theory states that reality exists outside of our perception. Truth involves aligning itself to reality. As one writer put it, a true statement pictures or maps reality accurately like a photograph. Truth isn't based on feelings, opinions, or group agreements, but on verifiable facts. This theory supports investigation. Truth is discovered. Truth does not invent facts about the world. This theory of truth provides a foundation for objective knowledge. It distinguishes truth from mere opinion or belief. Now, next, there's the coherence theory of truth. This theory states that a statement is true if it logically and consistently fits within a larger interconnected system of beliefs and propositions rather than simply corresponding to some external reality. Truth has an internal consistency. A truth statement coheres and doesn't contradict other accepted truths. The emphasis is placed on a well-integrated and unified body of knowledge. At its core, this theory of truth points to truth's internal consistency. Truth is not contained in isolated facts or claims. Truth comes by virtue of its fitting together in a non-contradictory systems. Coherence often implies more than mere logical consistency. In other words, a true narrative states the facts, and those facts don't contradict each other within a story. Where a mere correspondence theory points to features or facts within the world, coherence adds the condition of not contradicting other truths of a known system of truths. Now, we can see this in mathematics. A theorem is true because it coheres with other theorems in a mathematical system. In science, a theory is accepted if it coheres with existing and proven theories and experimental data, so that it forms a comprehensive picture. The law of non-contradiction plays a big part in the coherence aspect of truth. Now, I know that this is a lot of what seems like academic examination of truth and this topic. But trust me when I tell you that these ideas of truth are in full display across history, and they are definitely alive and well in our contemporary world. I want to now put this all together in some sort of simplified form so that you can compare it to what we find when we're looking at biblical truth as it declares itself. Now, first, as I've mentioned before, the postmodern view of truth is completely subjective. Truth is whatever you want it to be. In terms of God, it might say something like, well, the God I believe in, and then the person basically fills in the blank. In essence, each person defines truth for that matter, and not God. In reality, neither truth or God exist objectively. When the postmodernist speaks of my truth, they're actually speaking of a preference or choice. And if they say it enough times to themselves, they come to believe their preference is reality. But in fact, it isn't. If they have a God they believe in, that God is simply their own voice. In future episodes, we'll look more closely at that. Now, in the constructivist view of truth, it is built over time and within a context of a culture. It is evolutionary. It is human-centered. Morality evolves within a setting over time. As for God, he is merely a product of a setting, a culture developed over time. Some in this group would say, well, that man invented or created God. He doesn't exist as an objective reality. Truth doesn't depend on God, but is centered on man's living in this world. It is not timeless, but a byproduct and truly undependable in life. In the pragmatic view, truth is what works. Morals are applied only as tools to accomplish a goal. It is, in fact, amoral and subject to power, forcing truth that is useful. It dies when a person making it dies. In all of these three, there's no really objective or ultimate truth. Now, in the correspondence theory, there is an acknowledgement of objective and observed reality. The modernist view and scientific world utilize this aspect and viewpoint of truth in the explosion of scientific discovery. It is investigated, and it investigates the observable world. The laws of nature are stated in terms of correspondence. Of course, as man observes the world, God was eventually eliminated as a factor or necessity. We couldn't see God, so he must not be true or real. What is observed is the only truth. God is not necessary. But the testimony of science has changed with time and each theory. Science and observation can tell us what happens, but they certainly can't tell us why. The correspondence theory does acknowledge objective truth as far as it fits the system it is meant to fit into. It works and makes sense of what is observed in a larger context. It can provide larger answers, but it doesn't necessarily provide meaning. It too cannot provide us the why of our existence. Now, I brought all of these together to try to provide a contrast, both a contrast and a context for biblical truth. You see, all of these theories I've mentioned differ, and yet they do share some aspects. All of them are dependent on some form of observation. I use the term observation in contrast to revelation. Let me explain. What I desire, that's postmodernism. What we build and construct, that's constructivism. What works, that's pragmatism. What I see, that's correspondence. What makes sense, that's coherence. All of these come from human perspective. Human observation doesn't require God. In fact, many of them reject any notion or mention of God. And while the correspondence and coherence theories do rely and point to objective truths, by themselves, they don't require God. They are silent in themselves in terms of morality. And none of them provide answers or speak to the deepest questions of mankind. They cannot speak to the recognized realities of, for instance, love, conscience, and ultimate meaning. Even the meta-narratives provided by science are ill-equipped to provide meaning for life. Now, this brings me to the biblical model of truth. It is revelational. Biblical truth is observable by the ultimate reality of everything revealed by God and in God. Biblical truth derives what is necessary to provide meaning for life and the existence of everything. Where all these theories search for a way to determine truth, God reveals that He is the ultimate reality. He is truth. He is the referent for all of reality. Postmodernism seeks to shape truth in terms of what people desire. Biblical revelation and truth reveals what we need. Constructivism speaks to truth as built by mankind. Biblical revelational truth reveals that the God who was there before there was anything. Pragmatism structures truth in terms of what matches the goal that one is making. Biblical revelational truth reveals the only way to what really works. Correspondence truth declares only what they see within the limits of observation. Biblical revelation truth reveals who made everything that they see and things they even don't see. Attempts at coherent truth seeks to make sense of it all, but biblical revelational truth reveals the why of the one who made it all and where we fit in the story of everything. The amazing part of biblical revelational truth is that it does correspond to reality. Biblical revelation truth and revelational truth coheres at every level. It does not contradict itself. Its perspective is not temporal, it is eternal. God is from before the beginning, and He stretches out eternity. Listen how the Bible speaks of objective truth and its correspondence to reality. In Hebrews 1 and 2, it says, God, after He spoke long ago to the fathers and the prophets in many parts and in many ways, in these last days has spoken to us in His Son, whom He appointed heir of all things, through whom He also made the world. You see, God has revealed Himself through prophets and many others over time. But then He revealed Himself as the one who made the world. The Creator has spoken and finally come in the flesh to the ones that He made. This is an objective revelation from God of Himself. He is the referent for all reality. The Gospel of John gives an eternal and then an earthly context of God's revelation. There's a reason I have said that God is the referent for reality. It's not because I feel it. It is because that is how God has revealed it. John 1:1-4 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, not even one thing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of mankind." And what and the why of life has been revealed to us. God has revealed himself in the perspective against which all reality can be measured and known. You see, God's word has come to us. John 1:14 continues by saying, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And we saw his glory." Glory as the only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. How can we speak of and know what is true? How can we speak about what is false? It is because we have been shown what is the truth. Truth is not what we want it to be. It is what is, and what God has declared it to be. The false and untruthful can never provide the meaning which truth can. It may promise it, but it cannot deliver it. It cannot imagine what I cannot imagine what someone would do and how they would build their life if they knew it was a lie. Instead, they build their lives on what they want to be true. But in the end, only truth endures. It is the truth revealed by God. Build your life on truth and live. Why? Because truth matters. Thanks for watching and listening to Truth Matters. Please like, share, and subscribe to Truth Matters. It truly helps to spread and keep us going. We'll catch you next time.